Hello and welcome to Kraken Recaps. Today I will show you an action, sci-fi, thriller film from 2010, titled Repo Men. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. In the year 2025, technology has advanced to such outstanding levels that scientists have perfected biomechanical organs known as artiforgs. They're sold at very high prices on credit by a company known as the Union, and they hire repo men to locate and forcibly repossess the organ whenever a client defaults on a payment, invariably resulting in their deaths. Remy is one of these repo men, as shown by the tattoo on his neck, and the best at his job. Tonight, he's waiting inside a house for his target to arrive, and when he does, Remy doesn't hesitate to interrupt the fun time he's having with a woman to tell him he comes from the Union before knocking him out with a special taser gun. The woman hits Remy with her bag, trying to stop him, but Remy just knocks her unconscious too before getting down to business. After putting on some plastic overalls to protect his uniform and headphones to listen to some music, he takes out his tools and proceeds to cut the man open to retrieve his artiforg, which he then washes and puts in a special sealed bag. The next morning, Remy starts his day at home with his wife Carol and his son Peter. After dropping Peter at school, he goes around the city, collecting artiforgs and leaving clients to die. Afterward, he goes to the Union headquarters, where he bumps against an employee dressed as a giant lung and stops by a table to have some coffee, making him visible to all the potential clients waiting to be assisted. He watches how his boss Frank Mercer helps one of the salesmen convince a family to sign the papers with a flawless speech before going to the repo men's break room. In there, he finds Raymond Pearl complaining about getting small jobs and reminding him that he's on probation for brutally attacking a woman in the subway. Frank suddenly interrupts them, telling Remy not to stay around the main floor much because he'll spook the clients. Then he takes him to another room to scan all the artiforgs he's collected during the day as they're joined by Jake Freiwald, Remy's best friend. He used to bully him at school, but then they went to war and fought together. When the war was over, they accepted a job at the Union because it was perfect for their skill set, and the recruiter told them they were protecting the healthcare system, although they really didn't care about what they were protecting. They just had fun with the missions. After tazzing each other for the laugh and getting called children by Frank, Jake invites Remy to have some drinks, which he accepts, but first he's got to stop by Carol's workplace and let her know. Carol scolds him for not having asked to be transferred to sales, and they insult each other before he leaves. In the car, Jake tells Remy he thinks Carol is trying to control him, and that the two of them will always be repo men, but Remy understands his wife's wishes. When they stop by the traffic lights, they use their special scanners on a nearby civilian and find out he's got an artiforg in him, so they tease him and remind him what happens if he doesn't pay. When the man runs away in fear, they just laugh. They make it to the bar and share a couple of beers, discussing the possibility of having to repo someone they know while Remy watches the bar singer, Beth, with intense attention. He returns to his house a few hours later and starts playing some music by T-Bone before getting closer to his wife, intending to have intimacy with her, but Carol turns him down. So instead, Remy goes upstairs to check on his son and talk about his day at school. Some days later, Remy is hosting a barbecue party in his garden when Jake asks him for a favor. He has a client coming in and he wants to repo him there. Remy doesn't like the idea at first, but Jake convinces him by offering half of the double commission he's getting out of it. A taxi stops in front of the house and Jake cuts its passenger open right there in the middle of the street, and he ends up being seen by Carol and Peter when they enter the house. Carol is furious that his husband has allowed this, so she tells him to choose between his job and his family before leaving with their son. Remy tells Jake he'll have to talk to Frank about it. Later at night, Remy and Jake go out to patrol and chat about the new M5 neural net, a new technology used to connect people with brain damage to an eternal dream. Their conversation is interrupted when Jake's scanner finds a nest, which is what they call a refuge for hundreds of customers who have defaulted on payments and are attempting to escape the country. After retrieving all their weapons from the car trunk, they go inside and start tazzing as many people as possible. At first, they go down easily, but eventually they start to fight back. Jake has to deal with two customers by directly punching them or using a stun baton, and Remy finds himself in the middle of a hand-to-hand fight as well. He stabs all his opponents with a knife before going to look for Jake, who is being overpowered by a guy bigger than him. Remy knocks the guy out and ends up arguing with Jake, who thinks he didn't need help. The two of them return to Frank's office a couple of hours later with all the spoils, including 2 scanning jammers, which are used to avoid being found by the Repo men's scanners. After putting those away, Frank tells them he's impressed and offers them the opportunity to become full-time raid captains, which Remy turns down. When he's about to ask for a transfer to the sales department, Jake cuts in and tells Frank they're good like this. After work is over, Jake reminds Remy that rules are important, and so it's enforcing them. He drops Jake at his place, then goes to take care of what he wants to be his last Repo job, Jimmy T-Bone, a musician he's always admired. He finds T-Bone in his house working on some music and consuming a red powder, and when he mentions he's a fan, T-Bone asks him to help him finish the song before the repoing. Remy accepts, and when they're done, he also promises to take the track to the record company. Afterward, Remy asks him to lay down on the floor so he can take his heart. First he needs to stop it by using his defib unit, but when he puts the paddles on T-Bone's chest, the device malfunctions and Remy gets electrocuted, knocking him out for the 3rd time in his life. He wakes up some days later in a hospital bed, with Jake and Frank in the room with him. Carol had been there too, but left before Remy could see her. After telling him this was the fault of a faulty shock unit, they deliver the most important news: Remy's heart has been replaced with an artifact. As Frank insults him by dropping his salesman speech, Remy tells them he doesn't want the artifact and gets out of bed, leaving the room as he finally manages to disconnect the machine in the middle of a hallway and bleeding all over the place. He's only able to take a couple of steps after that. His body soon gives in and he falls to the floor, realizing he has no other choice but to accept the mechanical transplant. When he's released from the hospital, the first thing he does is to go home, but he can't get inside because his wife has changed the lock. Carol comes over when he rings the bell and gives him a suitcase, saying he chose his job over his family when he took that last case. Remy goes to stay at Jake's, who receives him with drinks and an offer to hang out with some girls, but Remy would rather rest. He goes back to work a few days later, and his co-workers receive him with a little welcome party that includes a bawdy dancer. Afterward, he takes up a case again, thinking he's ready. He breaks into the client's house and chokes him after he tries to defend himself. This leaves him unusually tired and with a high heart rate. When the time comes to take out the artifact, he finds himself with a trembling hand, unable to do it. He joins his fellow Repo men at a bar a few hours later and pretends he finished his job, but when he hears Jake tell his story, he can't stop thinking about the client having a family. Distressed, he leaves the bar early. The next day, he waits for Carol and Peter at the entrance of their house, because this is the only way he gets to see his son. After hugging him, he tries to talk to Carol, but her only response is to give him an envelope with a notice saying he's behind on his heart payments. Later, when Jake hears about this, he scolds him for lying but accepts the fact Remy needs a break, so he tells him they can work together again in the future after he feels better. Remy tries a sales position but it goes badly because he's developed sympathy for the clients and can't lie to them. His brutal honesty doesn't make for good sales. He tries getting some extra money by betting on horses, but he isn't good at that either. When the final notice arrives in the mail, Jake takes Remy to a nest and even tazzes a couple of people for him. However, Remy still can't do the job. Angry, Jake leaves after telling him not to come back until he's out of his slump and has enough artifacts to clear his debt. Remy still can't bring himself to do it, so when the Taz man wakes up, he beats him up and leaves him unconscious for the 4th time. He wakes up sometime later to the sound of the song he heard the other day at the bar. He follows it and finds Beth looking very sick, so he decides to take her to a motel and watch over her while her body goes through detox. When he uses his scanner on her, he discovers she has many artifacts and they must all be reclaimed. When Beth finally wakes up, she punches Remy for having helped her. When she mentions it's over for both of them, he says maybe it isn't. Remy breaks into the union's building and attempts to clear his and Beth's accounts, but he only manages to do one of her many organs before he's found by Jake, who is angry with him but lets him go when he sees him return his taser gun. He breaks into his old house next to say goodbye to Peter before returning to the motel and telling Beth they need to leave. They drive to the abandoned outskirts of the city and after burning down the car, they hide in an old, empty building. Meanwhile at the Union, Frank tries to give Jake Remy's case, but he refuses to take it, and so do the other Repo men. Days start to pass, and Remy and Beth build a small home in the old building by salvaging trash. One night, after she tells him all the details behind her artifacts, they kiss and make love. Afterward, Beth gifts Remy a typewriter she found in the trash. Remy begins to use it to write his memoir. Many days later, Beth hears something outside with her artifact ears, but Remy can't, so she connects some headphones to her head to show him. The source of the noise soon appears entering the building. It's Raymond, who has accepted Remy's case. The couple makes a plan to avoid getting caught. They take their things to another room that has a huge hole in the middle of the floor and cover it with a bedsheet. Beth hides behind the door and Remy pretends to be writing when Raymond enters the room, expressing disappointment over Remy being so easy to catch. After taking out his weapon, he walks farther inside and falls into the hole. However, the floor is now unstable, so when Beth comes closer to look at him, she falls as well, damaging her prosthetic knee. Raymond sees an opportunity and grabs his gun to tase her, so Remy improvises and kills him by dropping the typewriter on his head. After stealing Raymond's car, Remy drives Beth back to the city to get some supplies, but Beth shows him she knows how to fix her own knee using some tools she's found around. When they make it to the Union's parking lot, Remy sees the guy that wears the lung costume taking a break and steals it from him to sneak inside without undetected. He goes to see Frank at his office and punches him a couple of times before threatening him with the taser he took from Raymond. He also gives him a piece of skin with Raymond's tattoo, saying he'll do that to anyone that tries to catch him. Remy asks to be taken out of the system and Frank explains the system has changed after Remy's first attempt. Now accounts can only be cleaned by taking the organ to the Union's central office. Frank tries to make him an offer, but Remy knocks him out and steals the scanning jammers before returning to Beth and telling her they're leaving the country. When Frank wakes up, he orders Jake to repo Remy. Later at the airport, Remy and Beth manage to bypass the security checks thanks to the jammers, but they're still taken away when another passenger notices Beth's leg bleeding. Remy throws the jammers in the trash on their way out. While a guard gets ready to bandage Beth's knee, two repo men arrive at the office and scan Remy again, getting an alert this time. The couple reacts quickly and gets into a fight with all the guards, defending themselves with their fists or even using objects they find lying around, like the scissors Beth picks to stab two of the officers. After everyone is taken care of, they leave the office and come across Jake, who can't do anything because he's on the other side of a security panel, so Remy picks up Beth and takes her out of the building. Back in the car, the couple drives to an old building in the city slums where they meet with Asbury, a black market organs dealer Beth used to date. After he shares some red powder with Beth and argues with Remy about the morality of their jobs, he informs them he can't help Beth because he doesn't deal with joints anymore, so they need to pay a visit to Alva. When they go to get the procedure done, they discover there are actually two Alvas. One is a young woman that only does anesthesia, the other is a little kid that does the operation itself. Remy is worried about her age and skills, but little Alva proves to know her job. After Beth wakes up some hours later, they go back to Asbury's place, only to find he's been repoed. Jake appears then and tries to get Remy to come back with him, but Remy turns him down, saying he hasn't been the same since the accident. Jake confesses it wasn't an actual accident, he had rigged the defibrillator unit so Remy would build up debt and wouldn't transfer to sales. The two men start fighting hand to hand, and while at first it looks like they're on the same level, eventually Jake overpowers Remy and throws him through a wall. He throws Remy around until he is dropped on a metal bridge. Remy starts laughing and takes out a knife that he uses to stab Jake in the leg before Jake retaliates by knocking him out. After various memories flash before his eyes, Remy is woken up by Beth, who had tasered Jake and now tells him they need to run because a repo raid has arrived. They run through the building as hundreds of debtors start getting shot, and when they get stuck at a dead end, they're rescued by Rhodesia, the leader of an underground residence that drags them into a hidden room. When she sees Remy's tattoo, she threatens to shoot him, but he earns his stay when he shows her the scar on his chest. Nightmares don't let Remy sleep, so he goes out to check the damage, seeing all the fallen bodies in the building, including Alva's. The next day, he tells Beth there's no way out for anyone no matter where they hide, so what he wants to do is to finish this by going to headquarters and wiping the entire system. Some hours later, they meet with Carol and Peter on the train, and an argument with Carol soon starts. Peter takes his dad's taser and knocks her out before Remy hands him his manuscript and tells him to look for him in Punta del Este when he is old enough. Remy and Beth wait for Frank in his car and tase him before stealing his vehicle, which they use to return to the union's headquarters. Remy tases 2 of the security guards and shoots the 3rd one, then uses Frank's eye to open the door and get inside after shooting the security camera. He and Beth rush inside and while trying to avoid getting caught, end up entering a lab filled with scientists working on artifacts. Most of them pay no attention to the couple, but there's one that does get up and leaves through a door. Remy tries to talk to him, but the guards arrive then and start shooting indiscriminately, killing some scientists in the process. Remy and Beth leave through the same door the other guy used and find the hallway with the entrance to the union's database, but it's being protected by guards and repo men. A frantic battle starts then. Beth defends herself by using a fire axe she gets from the wall and Remy shoots the security guards with his gun, which he drops after he's done to grab his knives instead in order to fight the repo men hand to hand. He kills most of them easily, but when he finds himself on the floor surrounded by them, he asks Beth to pass him the hacksaw and uses it to finish the remaining men. Afterward, they use Beth's prosthetic eye to open the door to the database room and close it just in time before Frank and Jake arrive. They discover the server's only interface is an organ scanner, so the only thing they can do is start cutting themselves up and scan their artifacts from inside. After taking some of the red powder, they start the procedure, first doing Remy's heart and after sealing his wound, they do each of Beth's prosthetics as well. By the time Jake and Frank manage to get inside by using an artifact from one of the dead repo men, Remy is scanning the last of Beth's organs. Frank orders Jake to finish them, but when Remy says Beth's worth every job he's ever done, Jake decides to help. He kills Frank with his knife then hands Remy a syringe so she can bring Beth back to consciousness, and when the system asks for the scanned artifacts to be put on the computer's tray, Jake puts 2 grenades in it and blows up the whole database. Now every client is free. Sometime later, Remy, Beth, and Jake are in Punta del Este, enjoying the beach while listening to T-Bone's last song. Jake's gotten his tattoo removed, and his memoir has been published by Peter under the name The Repossession Mambo. When Jake starts teasing Remy for his book, he suddenly disappears, and the sea flickers with static before going back to normal. It is revealed then that Remy is in a coma and he never woke up from the hit Jake gave him on the metal bridge at Asbury's place. It was Jake that used the artifacts from that raid to pay for Remy's heart and a connection to the neural network. He said his goodbye to him before taking care of Beth and finding Remy's manuscript in his bag. Now Remy will be happy in his dreams forever.